She was not happy. And beware, folks. AB might be talking to Becky throughout the game day. They're best friends. Run it out, Wilson.
So picture this moment. You've got someone who's ruled the kingdom for years, trophies lining the shelves, everyone bowing down to your every move. Then out of nowhere comes this force you never saw coming, someone who doesn't ask permission to shine. That's exactly what happened when A'ja Wilson's world collided with reality.
WNBA champion, A'ja Wilson.
Here's where things get messy. Imagine getting that call, the one that tells you the future just rewrote itself without consulting you first. All those backroom conversations, all those careful calculations about who deserves what spotlight, suddenly none of it mattered. And the player you spent years trying to push aside, she's the one they're betting everything on now.
Caitlin Clark has captured the basketball world.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
We're not talking about some feel-good sports story here. This goes deeper into territory most people never want to examine. The ugly side where egos clash and carefully built empires start cracking. Because sometimes the most dangerous threat isn't the obvious rival throwing punches in public. It's the quiet replacement who shows up while you're still convinced you're untouchable.
First time, Wilson is watching the moment she found out she won that third MVP trophy.
Let's rewind to when Wilson owned everything that mattered. Picture someone sitting on top of the mountain, surrounded by every symbol of success you could imagine. Those MVP awards weren't just decorations, they were proof of dominance.
A'ja, she's been A1 since day one.
Top tier.
But she was on a whole different level while making WNBA history.
Championship hardware that caught every flash of light when cameras rolled, endorsement contracts with brands literally competing for her signature, magazine spreads and television segments where analysts couldn't stop gushing about her generational talent.
Clark hits the three. Too much space. Nearly 10 million.
Every morning, Wilson woke up seeing someone who'd fought tooth and nail to reach the summit. Someone who'd earned every ounce of recognition through pure determination. The idea of sharing any of that glory, especially with some unproven college kid from Iowa, never crossed her mind as a possibility worth considering.
Caitlin Clark is Time Magazine's 2024 Athlete of the Year.
Then Clark arrived like a wrecking ball, and Wilson's carefully constructed reality started falling apart piece by piece. This wasn't some gradual rise through the ranks where everyone waits their turn politely. Clark burst onto the scene, destroying every assumption about how stardom was supposed to work in women's basketball.
A two-time Olympic gold medalist and two-time WNBA champion, A'ja Wilson.
Before anyone knew what hit them, Clark was selling out every venue weeks before tip-off. Television numbers that the league had been dreaming about for decades suddenly became routine whenever she stepped on court. Highlight reels everywhere featured nothing but her ridiculous shots from distances that shouldn't be possible.
You were the league's MVP last year, and despite falling short in the finals, you wrote a column for the Players Tribune and
the excitement was undeniable. That competitive fire burning so bright it reminded longtime fans of legends they thought were extinct forever. Media coverage exploded beyond anything anyone had predicted. Casual observers who'd never cared about women's basketball were suddenly planning their weekends around her games.
What's that, about 26 feet? When she's going to her left and in rhythm.
And Wilson, the self-appointed queen watching someone else receive worship she believed belonged exclusively to her, completely lost her mind over it. Instead of recognizing that Clark was bringing millions of eyeballs to their sport, eyeballs that would eventually benefit everyone involved, Wilson made the choice that would eventually destroy her.
Aaliyah Boston doing this to the MVP A'ja Wilson in Game 1 is insane. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham were just loving the way she was dominating A'ja.
She declared war on someone who should have been her ally. The attacks started small enough that most people missed them entirely. A strategic like on posts questioning Clark's readiness for professional competition. Mysterious tweets timed perfectly to undermine her biggest moments without actually naming names.
2026 is shaping up to be a big year in the sports world with global stages, iconic venues, and can't-miss moments.
Wilson's social media became a calculated machine for promoting veteran achievements whenever Clark did something spectacular. Every record Clark shattered got met with throwback content celebrating Wilson's own legacy, subtle reminders about what real excellence supposedly looked like. When Clark landed that Time Magazine Athlete of the Year recognition, something that should have been celebrated as a massive victory for women's sports across the board, Wilson's online presence radiated nothing but skepticism and barely controlled anger. Anyone paying attention could read between the lines perfectly. Wilson saw Clark not as someone who could help lift the entire league to new heights, but as a direct threat to everything she'd spent years building through sacrifice and hard work. But jealousy never stays buried, no matter how sophisticated your attempts to hide it become. It leaked out during interviews where Wilson would drop loaded phrases about authentic impact and proven excellence, obviously designed to diminish Clark's contributions. It showed up in those passive-aggressive comments that got sharper and less disguised as Clark's popularity kept climbing to heights Wilson had never reached. It revealed itself every time reporters mentioned Clark's name, and Wilson would immediately pivot to discussing anything else. Wilson turned every single Clark achievement into a personal insult directed at her own legacy. She made Clark's success all about herself instead of about the incredible growth happening in their sport. She convinced herself she was protecting veteran honor when really she was just protecting her own fragile ego. What Wilson never realized was that Team USA officials were documenting every single interaction with professional detachment, building a file that would eventually seal her fate. Now let's talk about something the mainstream basketball media refuses to acknowledge. Everyone loves discussing Wilson's dominance, her trophy case, her ability to control games. But there's a fundamental flaw in her approach that becomes crystal clear when you understand how international competition actually operates. Wilson averages nearly 12 free throw attempts per WNBA game. On paper, that screams unstoppable force, someone so dominant that opponents can't defend without fouling. But when you actually study the footage, you see something completely different. You see someone who's mastered the art of manufacturing contact for referees. Every single drive ends with exaggerated reactions. Every defensive contest, regardless of how clean, results in theatrical appeals for whistles. Wilson's scoring in the WNBA isn't built purely on skill, it's built significantly on a constant stream of favorable officiating that's protected offensive stars for years. In domestic competition, this strategy works brilliantly, but international basketball exists in a completely different universe. FIBA referees don't care about your accolades or your social media following or how many commercials you've appeared in. They officiate games where physical contact isn't just allowed, it's expected. The same contact that sends Wilson to the charity stripe 12 times in regular season games gets you nothing more than a basic play-on call in international competition. Team USA scouts watched Wilson in exhibition games, and what they witnessed horrified them. Her efficiency didn't just decline, it completely collapsed. When referees allowed legitimate physical defense, when they stopped rewarding her contact-seeking techniques, Wilson transformed into someone barely recognizable. Her entire offensive flow depends on constant interruptions and favorable treatment that simply doesn't exist on the global stage. She's a system player designed for one very specific environment. Now contrast that with Caitlin Clark. When Clark puts points on the board, she does it in ways that no referee on the planet can influence. She steps back from 30 feet and buries shots that leave defenders questioning reality. When contact comes, she doesn't collapse or flop or hunt for whistles. She absorbs it and finishes anyway. Her deep shooting and court vision represent pure self-reliant offense that works on any floor in any country. Her game succeeds everywhere because it's built on fundamental excellence rather than system manipulation. Watch them side by side and the difference becomes blindingly obvious. Wilson initiates contact and freezes, waiting for someone to bail her out. Clark expects contact, adjusts mid-air, and scores regardless. Wilson's approach works perfectly in the controlled WNBA environment. Clark's approach works everywhere because it relies on nothing except basketball mastery. Team USA announced their preliminary pool for the 2026 World Cup. Wilson's name wasn't anywhere to be found. Sources say her reaction was nuclear. The woman who'd spent 2 years believing she was bulletproof discovered she'd been replaced by the exact person she'd tried to destroy. The meltdown reportedly went on for days. Wilson started making desperate calls to anyone connected with USA Basketball who might provide answers. Her representatives scrambled to arrange emergency meetings with coaching staff who'd already moved on. Meanwhile, Clark was receiving congratulations and expressing genuine gratitude for the opportunity to represent her country. The difference in their responses reveals everything about their true character. Clark posted simple appreciation, no shots fired, no demands for attention, just authentic excitement about learning from experienced teammates. Wilson's side immediately started floating stories about supposed scheduling conflicts that prevented her participation. Nobody bought it. Everyone recognized it as a pathetic attempt to save face after being publicly and definitively rejected by the program she thought she controlled. Here's what really matters though. Team USA coaches had been documenting Wilson's behavior for 2 solid years before making this call. Every snide comment got recorded. Every calculated social media post got filed away. Every interview where she attacked Clark got added to mounting evidence that this wasn't someone who'd prioritize team success over personal agenda. They needed players who'd elevate each other, not tear each other down. International competition demands something completely different from domestic league play. It's not about individual statistics or personal accolades or how many times your name appears in record books. It's about handling crushing pressure when your entire nation expects gold. It's about maintaining composure when hostile crowds scream in foreign languages and officials make calls designed to work against you. The Olympic stage magnifies everything, exposes weaknesses that regular competition can hide, and reveals true character when cameras from around the world capture every reaction to triumph or defeat. Think about this logically. Someone who can't handle criticism on social media, who melts down when internet strangers question her accomplishments, definitely can't handle the psychological weight of carrying American basketball globally. Someone who responds to competitor success with jealousy and resentment instead of professional unity is absolutely not who you want in your locker room when stakes have never been higher. Team USA coaches understand this intimately because they've watched championship dreams die, not from lack of talent, but from surplus ego and deficit emotional intelligence. They know one toxic attitude can poison team chemistry faster than any opponent. Wilson's reaction to being cut actually proved the coaches had made not just the right decision, but the only possible decision. Her response wasn't graceful acceptance or quiet determination to prove selectors wrong. Instead, it was an emotional explosion lasting for days. Desperate demands for explanations from anyone who'd listen, demonstrating exactly the kind of fragility that would become catastrophic liability in Olympic competition. Imagine that same reaction after a tough loss in gold medal competition. Imagine those frantic calls and barely contained fury directed at teammates or officials on the world stage. Compare that volatility to Clark, who spent 2 years absorbing constant attacks from Wilson without ever responding in kind. Clark has faced more scrutiny and manufactured controversy than almost any player in women's basketball history. She's handled all of it with quiet grace that makes sponsors eager to sign her and national selectors confident in her ability to represent the country with dignity. While Wilson was busy liking shady posts and making passive-aggressive comments, Clark kept her head down and let performance speak for itself. While Wilson turned interviews into opportunities to diminish younger players, Clark talked about being honored to learn from veterans. The contrast couldn't be more revealing or more damning. The chemistry developing between Clark and players like Aaliyah Boston represents something Wilson's massive ego would never have allowed to flourish. What we're witnessing right now isn't just a roster change, it's a fundamental shift in how women's basketball values its athletes. The era of manufactured contact and favorable whistles is ending. The era of pure unguardable skill built on fundamentals is beginning. Team USA sent a message that echoes far beyond a single selection. They chose character over chaos, professionalism over pettiness. Clark's appeal extends beyond American borders in ways Wilson's brand never could. International fans discovered her during college and fell in love with her deep shooting and infectious competitive spirit that translates across cultures. She creates excitement and growth that expands the global audience for women's basketball, which is exactly what Olympic platforms demand. Wilson's approach focused on existing fans. Clark's approach manufactures new ones. The 2026 World Cup and 2028 Olympics will showcase Clark's leadership on basketball's biggest stages. Team USA plans to build systems around her unique abilities and basketball intelligence. Power rarely collapses publicly. It erodes quietly through moments most people never witness. What appears as confidence hardens into entitlement. What feels like leadership slowly becomes isolation. When decisions finally arrive, they don't come with detailed explanations, only consequences. In elite circles, reputations get destroyed not by failure alone, but by how someone responds when spotlights begin shifting. So here's what lingers after all the headlines fade. Was this simply one roster decision, or the opening move in a larger recalibration where influence gets earned differently and legacy no longer guarantees protection? And if power balances really are changing, who feels it next? Because this story didn't end with one phone call. It only revealed how much more is still unfolding behind closed doors.